Asu Dhaka. I'm here to take you through changes in non-controlling interest percentage on presentation 4 of changes in degree of interest. How does changes in non-controlling interest proportion happen? It can happen either through increase or a purchase or a decrease or disposal. And this change in non-controlling interest is covered or dealt with by IFRS 10 B96 in detail. First of all, we need to establish whether parent has got control. And if yes, we need to consider the impact of the change. Does it result in loss of control? If no, it means either control has increased or control has decreased. So remember, we said control is absolute. Once you have it, you have it. Percentages do not matter. So a change in NCI means you had control before and you have control after the change. Whatever the change, increase or decrease. What that means, therefore, is control may only have decreased, and eventually we call that as an equity transaction between owners or between shareholders. Hence, a change in NCI percentage. A small gain or loss that is received from the parent, the difference in the parent as reserves, is recognized in either retained earnings, or you can create a separate reserve for it as directed by B96. Now, let's first understand what happens in the separate books of the parent. So, if there's a sale by the parent to NCI, what would happen? The parent will receive cash and reduce its investment. And there can be a gain or loss if the investment is measured at cost. If the investment is measured at fair value, first of all, there would be a remeasurement of the investment to fair value first before the sale and sold, which means we receive cash, we credit our investment at fair value, which should be equal. No gain or loss in that case. NCI, what does NCI do? Purchase of NCI, purchase of shares from NCI. The parent in this case increases the investment and credit back, so we purchased. If there's an issue of shares by acquiree, an issue of shares by acquiree, what it means is that the acquiree is the one that has caused the change. We call that an indirect. They receive bank and they credit share capital. They've given away new shares. From a parent's point of view, or NCI, they're receiving investment. So debit investment, credit back. So there is two sides to this account. Right. Now, additional interest in an existing subsidiary. So if we acquire a little bit more, so still B96. What does B96 say? It says when the proportion of equity interest held by non-controlling interest changes. First of all, an entity adjusts the carrying amounts of the controlling, which means the debit or credit, and non-controlling interest to reflect the changes in their relative interest in the subsidiary. Now, it's very important to know that B96, we focus on the NCI, because if we increase or decrease NCI, we have increased or decreased the controlling. So we need not to account for the controlling reserves of the parent. We just need to focus on NCI. So if NCI increases, we credit non-controlling interest. If NCI decreases, we debit non-controlling interest. The entity shall therefore recognize directly in equity the difference. So remember, we've credited either credit or debited NCI with the increase in the reserves because of the change. Then we also have paid or received an amount. The difference between the two amounts is recognized directly in equity, and it's only attributable to the parent. It's recognized either under retained earnings or as a separate reserve called an equity adjustment or transaction between owners, a reserve. And it's only attributable to the parent on the parent's section. It's not shared with NCI. Now let's look at the impact in the group accounting from B96. So sell by parent NCI. Let's understand what happens. So first of all, if we sell to NCI, what it means, NCI is the one increasing. So credit NCI. But then we've received bank. Remember, because in the separate books, the parent has already received bank and debited bank and created an investment and made a gain. That gain or loss that is going to P&L is not wanted at group level, because all gain or loss under B96 should go to standing change equity. So we have to reverse the investment and the gain or loss and compare which makes up the bank. So these two figures makes up the bank, and compare with this NCI. The difference, the gain or loss, goes to either retained earnings or to statement equity or separate reserve. If the investment has been if there has been a change in NCI and the investment is made at fair value, we would debit our investment only. We don't have any gain or loss. We credit our NCI. Excuse me for that one. We credit our NCI and have our gain or loss straight away. If it's a purchase, the change in NCI is caused by a purchase. Remember the parent, what the parent did? They debited the investment, credited the bank. So in this case, a purchase by parent decreases NCI. How do we decrease NCI? We debit. So debit NCI, credit investment. The difference, the investment, which is the amount that we would have paid, the difference gives us. So in other words, one thing that one has to note is the investment in this case. You bought investment when you first acquired control, and that portion of the investment is eliminated, is credited when you do the acquisition journal entry, when you recognize goodwill. The additional investment which increased or increased your proportion, investment proportion, and decreased the NCI proportion, is eliminated at the date of change in NCI. It's not eliminated as part of the investment acquisition because it was not there at acquisition date. The issue of shares by acquiree, this is very delicate. There are two ways in which to look at it. First of all, you need to go and increase NCI. So NCI also acquired shares, so especially if NCI is the one that bought all the shares. Credit non-controlling interest, debit share capital, which means you're eliminating the share capital of the acquiree and increasing NCI. And the gain or loss between the increase in value of NCI from where they were before and after, if you compare the increase versus what they paid through the share capital, there is a gain or loss which affects NCI. The other way of looking at it is we debit NCI, we first increase NCI as per B96 because they bought. We debit share capital, subsidiary equity. The difference again is taken to the retained earnings or a separate reserve. These examples would make a lot of more sense when you apply them in examples. Now, how do we calculate the change in NCI? It is very important to note that the calculation differs based on who caused. It's what we call direct changes, which is a transaction between parent and NCI. Those are easy to deal with. But where the change is driven by the activities of the investee, the subsidiary, issue of new shares to anyone, either to the parent or the NCI or to everybody, the calculation of the change is special. So let's start with the change between parent and NCI only, through either purchase or disposal. We just take our total net asset value times the percentage change. Or we can take the carrying amount of NCI date of change times percentage change of NCI percentage. We should get the same figure. Or carrying amount of parent share of net assets, the rate of change, times change over parent's percentage. So this would give more or less the same figure. Change caused by subsidiary, either share buyback, rights issue conversion, etc. It needs to be dealt with delicately. First of all, you need to establish the net asset value after change, both the total level at parent and NCI, which means you're using the new percentage. Okay, then you less the net asset value before. In this case, you then appropriate that net assets using the old percentage. Then you find the change in net asset value for parent and for NCI. Then if you compare with the consideration received or paid, you can then get your gain or loss on change. It is very important to be able to note these differences. What caused the change? Who is driving the change? How do I calculate? Right. So additional interest in an existing subsidiary, like we said, NCI measured it. Now, NCI can either be measured at fair value or measured at net asset percentage. So it's very now important to note what is the implication of the way we measure, which is when we measure NCI at fair value, that's full goodwill. When we measure the percentage of net asset, that's partial goodwill. Right. Now let's take an example, just to apply a little bit of what we've said. Let's take example 1 where NCI is measured in percentage of net asset value. So a 60% parent acquires additional 20%, which means from 60 to 20. 60 is control already, 20% I still have the same control. But NCI is no longer 40, it's now 20%. For 40,000, when NCI was 66,900. Now to calculate my change, so NCI decreased in this case. If NCI decreased, I credit NCI. There is a credit NCI. But how much? It was 60,900. And 60,900 is equal to 40%. And the change is 20%. So I say 20 over 40 times that I did half. Right? So I debit NCI with that change. I credit investment, the amount that was paid, SPB 96, which is 40,000, and the difference here goes to retained earnings or a change in ownership interest in the same shares equity. So what's most important to note is the calculation, which means our change in NCI, the decrease does not include goodwill. Remember, when there's full goodwill, when you measure fair value, NCI also can attract and have goodwill or gain over gain purchase. So the formula for calculating net asset value at date of the change in interest in this case is saying the total fair value of net assets at acquisition date. Then you add the total since acquisition reserves at the beginning of the year. You add the profit for the year before the change, increase in other reserves during the year, less the dividends paid to come to the net assets at date of change. Otherwise, just calculate, if you've given actual assets and liabilities, just calculate the carrying amount at the date of change. Scenario 2, same information, but we're now looking at the net effect on a net and NCI is when it's valued at fair value, and debt. So if you go back, we are saying where NCI is measured at fair value, part of goodwill gain by gain purchase attributed NCI. So in other words, our NCI is measured at fair value at acquisition debt. Then we say less NCI percentage net asset at acquisition debt. Then we can have a goodwill. This goodwill less to NCI. So on debt of when we are doing our change in NCI, we need to note that also goodwill portion has to either increase or decrease, has to change as well. So how do we deal with this in this scenario? We can take the fair value of consideration paid for additional interest, less the fair value of net asset lost and the goodwill portion for us to be able to also get change in ownership, interest or retained earnings Now, the best way to look at this is by an example. So 60% parent acquired additional 20%, same example, for 40,000. NCI was 70,000. And we need to now say, initially NCI was 66,900, it's now 70,000, which means there is a goodwill component. And if we do our same item, which means we've shared the NCI plus the goodwill. So we decrease our NCI in that case. We compare with the investment, trade investment, the difference, as you can see. It's very important to know that this change here is the percentage change in net asset plus goodwill. Very, very important to note that. That's the goodwill. Right? We then also need to note something very important in a foreign operation. So again, do this and probably show some examples for foreign operations. In IS 21, paragraph 48 to 49 is indicated would deal with the foreign currency translation reserve. So when we lose control, when there's a change in NCI, our gain or loss would not go to P&L. What we simply do is to calibrate or to readjust that the foreign currency translation reserve, if it was 60%, we're now supposed to be holding 80% since we bought 20% more. So in other words, we have to reapportion, take away from NCI a portion of the SL that they hold sitting with, giving to parent. And that is called the reattribution. And it's covered by IS 21 para 48 to 49. Now, you need to go and attempt example 1.1, 1.2, and examples 3.1 to 3.3. Note that these examples focus on acquisitions, the others focuses on disposals, which means increase in NCI or decrease in NCI. And after that, you also then need to do the examples relating to foreign operations. Next, we will be giving you part 6, which looks at the changes in degree of interest of a foreign operation, which means the loss of control, it's a change in NCI, it's step acquisition, but now focusing on a foreign operation. Rather, we'll be doing much more examples for this one because the principles have been learned, but are dealing with examples to illustrate the same principles but within a foreign operation example. I thank you.